Hello and welcome to Fairy Tale Friday, where I read from my childhood copy of Grimm's Fairy Tales. This week we're on to Rumpelstiltskin. Some of you may have watched the series Once Upon a Time. I really should check and see if, and I'm just looking where to put my bookmark. Really need to check and see if we can get that through Prime. I've also done a reading, I think I included this one from James Finn Garner. I'll have to double check, but of course his version is always different. And actually, yes, now that I'm thinking about it, I do remember reading James Finn Garner's version. So let's see what Grimm's had to say about Rumpelstiltskin. There was once a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter, and one day, having to go to speak with the king, he said, in order to make himself appear of consequence, that he had a daughter who could spin straw into gold. The king was very fond of gold, and he said to the miller, "That's an art which would please me very well. If your daughter's so very clever, bring her to the castle in the morning, and I will see what she can do." I mean, really, the miller didn't think that one through? All right. As soon as she arrived, the king led her into a chamber which was full of straw, and giving her a wheel and a reel, he said, "Now set yourself to work, and if you have not spun the straw into gold by an early hour tomorrow, you must die." With these words, he locked up the room and left the girl alone. It's a little harsh. There she sat for a long time thinking how to save her life, for she understood nothing of the art whereby straw might be spun into gold, and her grief became greater and greater, till at last she began to weep. All at once the door opened, and in stepped a little man who said, "Good evening, fair maiden. Why do you weep so?" "Ah," she replied, "I must spin the straw into gold, and I'm sure I don't know how." The little man asked, "What will you give me if I spin it for you?" "My necklace," said the miller's daughter. The dwarf took it, placed himself in front of the wheel, and whir, 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 3 times round, and the bobbin was full. Then he set up another, and whir, 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 thrice round again, and a second bobbin was full. And so he went on all night long, until the straw was spun and the bobbins were full of gold. At sunrise the king came, very much astonished to see the gold, but although the sight gladdened him, it only made his heart more greedy. Make you think of anyone in the news at the moment? Okay, I'll behave. He had the miller's daughter led into another room, still larger, full of straw, and then he bade her spin it into gold during the night if she valued her life. The girl was again quite at a loss what to do, but while she cried the door opened suddenly as before, and the dwarf appeared and asked her what she would give him in return for his help. "The ring off my finger," she replied. The little man took the ring, began to spin at once, and by morning all the straw was changed to glistening gold. The king was rejoiced above measure at the sight of this, but still he was not satisfied, as greedy people are. Leading the girl into another still larger room full of straw, he said, "This you must spin during the night, and if you succeed, you shall be my bride." Really, why would you want to marry a douche like that? Oh, wait, green card. What was I thinking? I know, bad girl. "For," thought he to himself, "a richer wife thou canst not have in all the world." When the maiden was left alone, the dwarf again appeared and asked for the third time, What will you give me to do this for you?" "I've nothing left that I can give you," sighed the miller's daughter. "Then promise me your firstborn child if you become queen," said he. The miller's daughter thought, "Who can tell if that will ever happen?" And not knowing how else to help herself out of her trouble, she promised the dwarf what he desired, and he immediately set about and finished the spinning. When morning came and the king found all he had wished for, he celebrated his wedding, and the miller's fair daughter became queen. Again, really, why would you want to be with someone like that? I mean, ick. But in any case, about a year after the marriage, when she had ceased to think about the little dwarf, she brought a fine child into the world, and suddenly, soon after its birth, the very man appeared and demanded what she had promised. The frightened queen offered him all the riches of the kingdom if he would leave the child, but the dwarf answered, "No, something human is dearer to me than all the wealth of the world." The queen began to weep and groan so much that the dwarf pitied her and said, "I will give you 3 days. If in that time you discover my name, you shall keep your child." All night long the queen racked her brains for all the names she could think of and sent a messenger through the country far and wide to collect new names. The following morning came the dwarf, and she began with Caspar, Melchior, Balthazar, and all the odd names she knew. But at each the little man exclaimed, "That's not my name." The second day the queen inquired of all her people for uncommon and curious names, and called the dwarf Ribs of Beef, Sheepshank, and Laceleg, but at each he said, "That is not my name." The third day the messenger came back and said, "I've not found a single new name, but as I came to a high mountain near the edge of the forest, where foxes and hares say good night to each other, I saw there a little house, and before the door a fire was burning, and round this fire a very curious little man was dancing on one leg and shouting, 'Today I stew, and then I'll bake. Tomorrow I shall the queen's child take.' Ah, how famous it is that nobody knows that my name is Rumplestiltskin." Um, didn't the guy just say he didn't find a new name? But in the very last line of the poem, it says that my name is Rumpelstiltskin. Boy, I tell you, between the miller who pawns off his daughter on a lie, the daughter who marries the cretin who kept making her spin more gold, then after they get married, apparently he's forgotten about spinning gold. Maybe it's just this week. I don't know. Grr. When the queen heard this, she was very glad, for now she knew the name. Soon after the dwarf came and asked, "Now, my lady queen, what is my name?" First she said, "Are you called Conrad?" "No." "Are you called Hal?" "No." "Are you called Rumpelstiltskin?" "A witch has told you! A witch has told you!" shrieked the little man, and in his rage stamped his right foot on the ground so hard that he could not draw it out again. Then he took hold of his left leg with both his hands and pulled away so hard that his right hand came off in the struggle, and he hopped away howling terribly. From that day to this, the queen has heard no more of her troublesome visitor. It didn't turn out so good for Rumpelstiltskin, and let's hope this king and queen only produced once. Next week, we're on to the Goose Girl And provided it's a nice quiet week here in my quiet little world, well, little world that I choose to keep quiet, so hopefully we'll be down in the new reading room. Take good care.